You are welcome to this lesson. Today, you are going to learn how to answer WASSCE questions on simile. And this video is proudly sponsored by IOTA Virtual Learning Platform. In this video, you are going to learn all you need to know about simile for you to excel in your WASSCE examination so that you can get the best out of your exam. So, are you ready to learn with me today? Get your writing materials and let's begin. So, what is simile? So, a simile is a figure of speech that compares two different things by using the words as or like to make the comparison. I know this is not new to you, you probably learned it since you were in primary school. However, we are going to learn what you need to really know about simile for your WASSCE examination. So, simile usually state that one thing is similar to another without directly saying it is the other thing, like that of metaphor. If you have watched my video on metaphor, then you would understand what I'm saying. Simile, unlike metaphor, usually use as or like to show its comparison. So the key word in simile is what? As or like. So it's either it says that A is like B or A is as B. So it is not a direct comparison like metaphor. So let's consider a few examples. So we have Tayo ran like a cheetah. This is a cheetah, and we all know that it is an animal that is known to be a very good runner. So here we are comparing the ability of Tayo to run fast to that of a cheetah with the use of like. So example 2, we have the sunset was as red as a ripe tomato. So here we have an example of has to compare the sunset to a what? A ripe tomato. And for you to say that a sunset is as red as tomato, then you must have imagined when you read this or hear this how red that sunset must have been. And that is another importance of what? Simile, just like every other figure of speech. It helps us to what? Visualize whatever it is that is being said. We are going to discuss that in detail as we move on. But now, let's continue with the examples. Example 3. The city is as crowded as a sardine can. In fact, when you see this, then you must have imagined that, oh, the city must have been jam-packed because we can't even say that a sardine can is crowded. The right word would have been jam-packed because, they are always like 4 or 5 in a very small can. So you can imagine how crowded the city must have been. Now, before we move on to discussing the purposes of simile, let's consider a few examples of simile from your WASSCE past questions. As I've said earlier, this class is going to be as practical as possible. So let's consider our first example, question F from section B, WAEC 2019. And it reads, once, when I remarked in class that Adamo was like a person pursued by a demon, pushing him to work so hard, everybody laughed, including him. So here we are primarily concerned with the underlined words. However, I have written the full sentence because I want you to understand the context. Do you understand? Also, I want you to note that this question is usually from your section B, which is usually the comprehension passage. So the question on this is, what figure of speech is used in this expression? So what figure of speech is it? We already have the keyword like. The comparison was done with what? Like. So the figure of speech is what? Simile. That's our correct answer. Sometimes the question is usually asked in form of what is the figure of speech and what does it mean? But for this particular question, the only thing that was asked was what? The figure of speech. So you should note and always stay calm, regardless of how familiar you are with the past question. Only answer the question that is asked. Do you understand? So let's move on to the next question, which is question G from section B, WAEC 2016. So we have my cousins ran like the wind and escaped, leaving me to my fate. Again, we are only primarily concerned with the underlined words. Every other word there is just for you to understand the context better. So the question on it is what? What figure of speech is used in this expression and what does it mean? So we have both questions here and we have to answer the two. So the figure of speech is what? We've seen our keywords again. The way the ran was compared to what? The wind with the use of like. So our figure of speech is what? Simile. And it means that his cousins ran very fast. So let's move on to the next question, which is question G from section B, WAEC 2006. So here we have I saw something horrible. A boy weeping in the forest, and he had no face. No face, Sahib. So this is like a conversation between two persons. Do you understand? So the other person was exclaiming. Then he continued. No eye, nose, mouth, nothing. Then the other person said, do you mean it was like this, Shaib? Asked the watchman, and raised the lamp to his own face. The watchman had no eyes, no ears, no features at all, not even an eyebrow. So I've written the full passage because you actually need this context for you to get the question that was asked on this particular question. Do you understand? So let's look at the question that was asked on it. So we have what does this refer to? That is, in that conversation, what does this refer to? So in that conversation, or if you look at our underlined words, you will see that something was compared to that this with the use of what? Like. So this is to show you that sometimes the questions don't just come in the form of identify and tell us what it means. Sometimes it can be twisted or tweaked in a way just to ascertain that you really understand what simile is. Do you understand? So this is like you giving us the real meaning. Do you really understand it? So do you mean it was like this? So the question is asking, what does this refer to? That is, what was this in that context? So according to the sentence, we have asked the watchman and raised the lamp to his own face. That means he was comparing what Saib was describing to his what? To his own face. So this referred to what? Can you tell me already? You can put it down in the comment section before I unveil it. So this refers to what? So this refers to the face of the watchman. So this is just for you to understand that the question can be asked from different perspective. Don't panic. Just try to read it with the context. If you need to read a whole paragraph, do so that you can understand it better for you to pick the correct answer. Do you understand? So let's move on to the next question, which is question G from section B, WAEC 2020. So we have, after what seemed like an eternity, the woman's son drove in his car to fetch Mama. So again, we are only primarily concerned with the underlined words. Seemed like an eternity. That is, they are comparing that period of time to what? An eternity. What does eternity mean? We all know that eternity means forever and ever. So that means we are trying to say that it's a very long period of time. So what does this expression mean? Here, we are not asked for the figure of speech. We are only asked about what the meaning. So always pay attention to the question before you answer so that you don't ask the question that is not asked. Do you understand? So you really need to be calm when you are answering your question. It is not just about knowing what to write, you also need to be what? Calm. So our answer is what? It means after a very long period of time. So we are not going to write simile because we were not asked to point out the figure of speech in the expression. Are you following? So always pay attention to how the question is asked before you answer it. Do you understand? Now move on to the next question, which is question F from section B, WAEC 2004. So we have the fateful day came, and Eze, happy as a lark, bid a excited goodbye to his family. So, we've answered a lot of questions on the use of like. But simile is usually pointed out with what two keywords, as and like. So here we have has. Happy has a lack. So the question on it is what figure of speech is contained in this expression? So we need to identify the figure of speech. You already know it because we already have our key indicator, which is what? As. So the figure of speech is what? The figure of speech is simile. So we're not asked for the meaning. So there's no need for us to write the meaning. So I've purposely picked these random questions so that you can understand that the question can actually be asked from different perspectives. It's not every time that they will ask you for the figure of speech and the meaning. So now let's move on to the next thing, which is to discuss the purpose of simile. I really need you to pay attention to this because usually students only think that all they need to know about simile is the definition that, oh, as or like, anything that has as or like is simile, or any comparison that has as or like is simile. And then they also need to know how to identify it. But beyond that, we are going to discuss 6 purposes of simile in this video so that you can learn how better to use simile to get the best out of your WASSCE. Let's list it first. To create vivid imagery. 2. To explain complex ideas. 3. To make abstract concepts relatable. 4. To add emphasis. 5. To enhance storytelling. And 6. To create connections. Again, pay attention to this part because it's really going to assist you in your section A WASSCE question, which is the writing section. Of course, if we are talking about creating vivid imagery, then we are talking about the writing aspect. Do you understand? So let's see how we can do this. First, to create vivid imagery. So similes help readers or listeners to visualize and connect with the description, making it more memorable and engaging. That is, with the help of simile and many other figure of speech, your write-up will not just be bland. You'll be able to help your reader connect with you, visualize whatever it is that you are trying to say, feel it, smell it, taste it, whatever it is that you are trying to describe. Your reader will not only hear it, but they will also feel it alongside with you because you are using the right word and the right description, such as simile. Do you understand? Also, sometimes some students only think that vivid imagery is limited to visuals alone. That is, what you can imagine in your mind to see that, oh, I'm imagining that I can see this thing. No. There are actually other types of what imagery. And these are, it could be auditory, which will appeal to your sense of hearing. So if I describe a sound now, you can imagine listening to that sound in that moment. Or it could be olfactory, which is going to appeal to your sense of smell. So if I'm describing a particular type of smell, there's a way I will use my words, and you will be able to imagine perceiving that smell in that moment. Also, it could be tactile, such that when I make my description with my words, you will be able to imagine that touch on your skin. And it could be gustatory, which will appeal to your sense of taste, such that as you read that expression, you can imagine that that thing that I have described is really on your taste bud and you can perceive it. Do you understand? So, vivid imagery is not limited to visualizing an image alone, it could be in these 5 forms. So take note of that and try to imbibe it when you write. I'm also going to give you practical examples on each of it using questions from your YSSC past question. Do you understand? So I think you should really note this down. Try to write it down and pay attention to it if you are not familiar to it prior to this moment. Do you understand? So let's see how we can do this practically with some of the questions from your YSSE past question. So we have question 4 from section A, YX 2021, and we want to use this question to exemplify writing sentences to what? To show visual imagery. So the question reads, you have been awarded a scholarship by a local company. Write a speech you would deliver at the presentation ceremony stating the benefits of the scholarship. So this is the question. So it means that you need to show your appreciation in that speech, and you also need to state the benefits of the scholarship. Do you understand? So let's see how you can use your words, especially simile, because here we are talking about simile. How you can use simile sentences to create visual imagery to suit this kind of question. So I have come up with this. This scholarship is like a ray of sunlight breaking through the clouds on a stormy day. For your writing section, you are usually at the liberty to come up with any creative content that you like. So, but here I have imagined that you are probably writing from the perspective of you already at the verge of dropping out for some reasons, maybe financial constraints. Do you understand? But when you got this scholarship, it's revive your hope of going to the university, or maybe it is a secondary school. Do you understand? When you have a stormy day or a heavily rainy day, everywhere seems cold and quiet, like, it is not really exciting. But when eventually you have a ray of sunlight, maybe towards the evening, that is like a ray of hope when everybody has thought that, oh, everything is just going to be quiet today. So you can actually communicate that deep feeling of renewed hope with an expression like this. So let's look at another example with the same question. I have, my dreams are now within reach, like a ripe fruit waiting to be plucked. So, this is also a visual imagery. You can visualize as you read, you can visualize a ripe fruit that is now within reach. You can just go there, put up your hands and what? Pluck it. Do you understand? But you're also at the same time using it to communicate a deep feeling that your dreams of maybe going to school, probably a university, is now achievable. It is now doable. Do you understand? You now see it feasible. So you're able to communicate all those feelings using imagery, especially that of simile, in such a way that your reader will be able to connect with you. So let's move on to another question, which we are going to use to exemplify auditory imagery. And that is the imagery that appeal to the sense of hearing. So we have question 3 from section A 2020 WAEC. The question reads, as the senior prefect of your school, write a letter to the principal pointing out at least 2 practices among students that should be discouraged and 2 habits that should be promoted among teachers. Again, it is a write-up. I might have another content story. I might come up with different story, and another person is going to come up with different story. That's not the point. The point is, can you use the English language efficiently? Do you understand? And can you communicate your feelings correctly? Do you understand? So here I have come up with this. The chatter in the hallways is like a never-ending echo that disrupts focus. So here I'm trying to imagine that maybe one of the practices that I want to discourage among the students is the fact that they chat in the hallways, probably during lectures. Do you understand? So now that I've compared it to a never ending echo, everybody knows that echo is not suiting to the ear. When you hear an echo, you just want it to stop. You want it to stop. So by so doing, you are able to communicate how this chatter often affects you. Do you understand? By comparing it to a never-ending echo, by comparing the chatter to a never-ending echo. Do you understand? So simile is one of the ways to write sentences that would eventually make up a very good paragraph. So I'm sorry to cut you short, but we'll have to continue this lesson in the next video because I don't want it to be too long in order for it not to bore you. Do you have any question? If you have any, do not hesitate to put it in the comment below, as I'll be glad to answer your question. I would also like you to write one or two expression of simile in the comment section so that I'll be sure that you actually understand what I'm trying to explain. I hope you enjoyed this lesson as much as I do. I am Romeso Adeyemo with the brand name English with RMG. Kindly like, subscribe, and please share with your friends. Let them benefit as well. Thank you.